Bonjour et bienvenue à ce webinaire.
Hello and welcome to this webinar on inspiring practices in using digital technology for teaching and learning. We are currently in the beautiful premises of the Université du Québec at Trois-Rivières, Quebec City campus. We're very well here. So I'm your host, Stéphane Dion from L'École Branchée, which is your media for teaching in the digital age, which has been accompanying the stakeholders, all of them, of the education sector in their professional development for 25 years already. I am honored to welcome expert guests who will present video testimonials from the network. And their testimonies make the development of the three dimensions of the Digital Competency Reference Framework concrete. Acting as an ethical citizen in the digital age, developing and mobilizing technological skills, and producing content with digital technology. We have a wonderful program for you. What we want is for you to take part in sharing inspiring practices related to the use of technology in the classroom are happening in many settings and are both grand and simple. Use the chat to share your inspiring practices, those that are lived in your classroom, in your school, or in your school board, or in your school service center. Also, name the ones you would like to put into practice after listening to our guests. We have Julie Michel and Manuel Garé, who will raise what you said in the chat today. They're both from the Bureau de la mise en œuvre du plan d'action numérique en éducation. Hello, both of you. The webinar is offered in simultaneous translation. So to access the translation, click on the globe at the bottom of your Zoom platform and choose the language in which you would like to listen to the webinar. So it is translated in English. This webinar will also be recorded. So actually, we are being recorded as we speak. It will be available on the Digital Action Plan website in the training section. So let's get started. Let's begin with block one, acting as an ethical citizen in the digital age. So let me introduce our two guests. We have Annie Turbide. Hello, Annie. Hi. Annie is a pedagogical advisor at RECI, National of the Development of the Person. So the RECI is a wide network having more than 270 digital pedagogical advisors to support people in the network. It's important to mention that. We also have Maxime Pelchat, who is a high school teacher and now a digital strategist at Cadre 21. Cadre 21 is a partner organization offering several resources for your professional development. Hello, Stephanie. Hi, Maxime. So let's get started. The question I will ask you to answer in the chat, and please use only a few words, what characterizes the ethical citizen in the digital age? And while you're writing in the chat, I will invite Annie to start. Yes, it's a great question to start. So I would summarize this in the one word. Ethical citizen in the digital age would be summarized by digital. So there are, dilemmas in the daily life. Should I share this picture? Should I comment that post? So it can also be big questions. For example, what are the impacts of face recognition? What is the relationship between humans and machines? So big issues. So facing these issues, the key is autonomy. So that's the word I wanted to say. And it does manifest through three skills: being conscious, reflecting, and acting. Being conscious is, does that create emotions to me? Is this picture important to me, or other things? So could I be biased with my decisions? Do I have the necessary knowledge to reflect on a given issue? So this is to be conscious or be aware, to take a moment, and then reflecting. What are the different points of view about a given situation? What are my options? Can I share? I could not share, etc. And looking at the impact is important. What will happen when I've made my decision? And obviously, as we want citizens to be people who don't only think and reflect, but who also act, the last skill is to act. So to be able to make decisions, assume them, and to be able to analyze them, to readjust if necessary. So this autonomy that we develop will be useful on the individual sphere, but also in the collective sphere to face the issues of today and of tomorrow. So to be a citizen in the digital age is to understand digital so that we don't only, so that we can control it. And why is this at the core of things? Well, I fell in love with this element when I saw the reference framework for the first time. The circular scheme that we see at the beginning gives us a good idea of the interdependency relationship between the 12 dimensions. And it's not linear, it's not hierarchical, it's a circle. So we can see that the two dimensions at the center, technological skills and ethical citizens, are touching to all other dimensions. What's interesting as well is to see these as a filter, so that we should take the time to filter through all of our actions in digital. So, for example, if I have a so if we have a project for a podcast, we need to look into the skills necessary, to the tools necessary to do this. But we should also automatically think about acting as an ethical citizen in digital by reflecting ourselves and getting our students to reflect on the issues related to the pedagogical intention that is behind this project, as Annie explained so well. So the ethical citizenship is at the forefront of our reflection, our actions, so in our reflective action position as a professional, and we need to do this at the core of our practice and also support our students throughout this. So let's go into that direction. Annie, how do we develop citizenship in the digital age among youth? That's a quiz question, isn't it? Well, as a teacher, you need to get into the autonomy process. So if we say the goal and the key is to have more autonomy, as a teacher, we would need to get into that process of autonomy. It's, we would say in English, empowerment. So that is giving the power to act in reflection and in action. So how can we do this? Well, classroom is a privileged place to do that because we have the opportunity to modelize skills and competencies and knowledge with our children. It's like a lab. We support students in this development, but we can make mistakes as well. There's room for making mistakes. That's why it's the perfect environment to develop the 3 skills that I mentioned. So being aware is through our pedagogy, that is to allow students to take a step back and take a break. It's a moment where we can delve deeper into subjects that we couldn't delve into if we didn't have this organized context, which is school, taking time to breathe, to look into an issue, taking a step back before delving into it, and then taking moments to address digital in class, whether taking moments in a learning situation where we take time to learn more about a topic in digital, or to have complete learning situations on algorithm functioning to allow them to understand. We develop their literacy so they will be better equipped to judge and assess what happens later on. And a classroom is the place to give them power to act, so invite them to the table of the deliberations, to give them room to understand that what is happening is tangible and that it's real life and that they have power to act. So Stephanie, all in all, what I'm saying is that all the practices we'll present today, which are very inspiring, are aiming towards, definitely. And it starts even in preschool. Let's listen, Ms. Julie. Oftentimes, we work on digital citizenship with the eldest and the youngest in preschool, and grade schoolers are the ones we've forgotten about because problems don't necessarily start there. So we we wanted to address the rights of images. It might seem complicated. By the way, teacher was wondering how children will react to this topic, but it's not that complicated. So because children are simple, they're spontaneous. So when we ask them, if I take a picture of you and I want to post it on the internet, on Facebook, will you agree or not? And why would you agree? Why would you not agree? So they had a lot of, elements. For example, if you took a picture of me and I don't like it, well, even if I normally would agree that you would publish it, in this case, I don't want you to publish it because I don't find myself good looking on that picture. So we addressed these types of concepts, and children are better than we think to reflect and to be honest in what should happen, what should not happen. It's a beautiful project to do in the classroom with children. So what I get from this is the importance to allow students to reflect on their use of digital as soon as they have access to a digital device or a screen. Annie, you talked about falling in love. I fell in love with a lot of things. You'll see all the things I love today. So this project with the preschoolers is very interesting. And through learning through questioning. So Julie said the student doesn't say what you should do with the picture or not. She asks questions to the children, and through their responses, she can then propose actions or options, but they're not necessarily guided by this is the right answer, this is the wrong answer. No. So this approach, this position as a teacher is very interesting. So we don't judge the use, and we let these children, they're very young, we let them exercise their critical judgment. So that is what really is of interest to me. There's room for nuance, even with students. What you don't know is that at the end of the project, they put everything in action. They went throughout the school, they took pictures of a person they considered as important to create a digital book of the significant people to them in their context. So they need to practice that. So they need to ask these people questions. Can I use your picture on the internet, etc.? So they are in action, and they develop this empowerment. So it's a project that covers many dimensions. Maxime, yes, absolutely. Just for the exercise, I noted 4 of these. So first of all, the action of taking a picture. Well, we understand that this is producing content, digital content. I also noted throughout this project that as we were digging into this project, we would develop digital skills, which brings us to the center of our scheme here with what I mentioned, various software and platforms used in everyday life. That's interesting with preschoolers. We are in everyday activities, and we put these in a school context. That's very inspiring. Getting back to the pedagogical intention, I would say that we obviously touch upon critical thought. This is the dimension right here that is closely related to ethical citizenship, because we propose that students pose a reflexive judgment on their use of digital by being self-critical. And I would also say that this is related to communicating with digital tools, because students have to, and I quote, recognize or define the necessary landmarks to preserve confidentiality. So this activity with other people's pictures and our pictures, it touches upon that. So we are talking about authentic practices. This happens for real together in the school context. So Annie, you and your team supported pedagogical advisors in general, in adult general education, to build a course that focuses on the ethical dimension of digital. So what happened? So it's a process that's still ongoing, by the way. So the process of development of this course is very inspiring. It comes from an issue that was named in the context, that is the use of cell phones. So pedagogical advisories of adult general education of 2 regions got together and thought about what they could do, or how they could develop this questioning among their students in use of these devices. And quickly, we realized that focusing on only the use of cell phones was not enough. So we needed to go further and shed light on the reflection of the use among the students. So one team was built to create this course, and the goal was to develop the empowerment of the youth and transposition in their context. What's inspiring as well is in terms of literacy, we address several digital issues. For example, the algorithm functioning and its impacts on daily lives. For example, the media education, what social media have as an impact on self-esteem and the environment and economy. So a range of topics that youth touch upon, and these allow them to develop their skills in the acting dimension. Hélène, we think it's important to develop citizenship in the digital age among adults. Several of our students are vulnerable in several spheres of their life. And in adult education, there are not a lot of optional courses. If we do not make them aware of everything that's hidden behind the use of technological tools, who will do that? So our intention is to inform them. We want them to be more aware of the digital health issues so that they can use these tools by being aware of the various issues related to them. So we want that the students at the end of the course be able to use in their daily lives the strategies they will have learned in the course. We want them to be we want them to use technological tools, whether it's we want them to go into social media to share content by knowing everything that is hidden behind that so that they're aware of all of this. Maxime, you talked about the interrelationship of these dimensions. In this case, how does this apply? We can clearly see that the intention that was there in this collective program was to have something that touches upon citizenship. We're the center of things. But quickly, we realized that in the content that's addressed in the course, we are touching on several dimensions. We will clearly raise awareness of digital issues, which is an integral part of developing critical thought. We talked about personal data, algorithms. Now we're in the informational culture dimension. Knowing how to post, that is in the communication dimension. We wish for students to adopt sustainable best practices. So that is personal development. And what I find particularly inspiring is the co-development of this program. I said, Annie, to know that we worked on this remotely, collectively. So it's a great example that we are always developing and mobilizing our digital skills, which is a process that will be lifelong. Talking about continuous processes, we will talk about professional development. You'll soon hear a high school teacher who will indicate what she did to develop professionally in the goal to develop citizenship among her students. Ms. Valérie. So digital is something that is part of our youth's lives. So developing citizenship in the digital age, we are right in the middle of that. We're not necessarily knowledgeable about everything in this universe. My mission is, on my own social media, is to follow people who are in the education world, people who work in digital. I call that my technological scan. I do this in my personal life. It's very relevant. If a student mentions something that I don't understand, I ask the question, oh, really? What is that? What is the app? What is the social media? And I question them. And then I have a better understanding of things. I look better in front of students. And I'm interested in how students use digital. I always have students who surprise me through their reflection or their understanding of some issues. Sometimes in digital, they will raise issues I haven't seen because I don't have their age. I'm not on the same social media they are. And it is true that my students take part in my personal or professional development. That's very inspiring. I really liked it when she mentioned it's important to be interested in your own students, in their digital universe. So Annie, I'd like to hear you on what we need to develop citizenship among these students. So first of all, Valérie, she's convinced. She tells us from the start that it's important to develop citizenship. So what's interesting in what she sheds light on is the way she is orienting her professional development to reach that goal. So where I start off with my knowledge, my skills, about these issues will orient where I go. So she talked about a technological scan. That's very interesting. I don't know if we saw that, but she said she made sure the information would get to her. So she would follow the right people. So it's a great way to organize, to keep up to date, and to prepare to live through this with our students. Yes. So with the reflection she is presenting, with the ethical citizen at the beginning, we are quickly moving towards technological skills. So you're learning a new technology to keep up to date, which is what Valerie said. Learning about emerging phenomena in digital world to develop your own education. She mentioned that as well. What's inspiring to me as well, which is at the core of her method, it's the professional and personal development that she did with that. And that is directly related to acquiring and maintaining, developing skills for your professional life. That's what she mentioned. Going on digital content and professional networks to keep up to date on new developments. And this last element about the technological scan and being in the social media to keep up to date, this has to do with the information culture, because you need to have just develop your skills in information culture to be aware of various things that happen and use them in your own practice. Managers are also leaders in the development of the digital age of things, in the development of digital skills. What started off this for this manager? So Annie and I spoke with Mathieu, who told us that for the last 2 years, he has been at the head of a plan in his school. And quickly they saw with the other teachers that their main goal was to coordinate everything that already existed. They didn't start from scratch. They have a lot of initiatives in this environment. So there was a coordination issue here. And to have good coordination, the central dimensions of the reference framework became an common orientation zone. It's a starting point for the whole school team. So they started off with these orientations, and then the specific objectives, that is what the teachers would do with their students, that had to be determined by the teachers, which dimensions they would focus on with their students in school. So each time they had meetings, every time they talked about this major coordination, it is the citizenship at the era of in the digital age that was the focus of things, on the technical aspect of things and the pedagogical aspect of things. Let's listen to Mathieu. In the digital skills, there are several aspects, and I'm just reading them, and they're very ambitious. So I told the teachers we should focus on something that we can tangibly integrate fully. So they decided to focus on the ethical aspect, which was the central element of all considerations. There is another aspect that pertains to learning the applications, which is of a more general nature. So as to ethics, it goes beyond respecting royalties. It's respecting the citizen in the digital age. That was the goal of the reflection, and how that can be upheld in our values. We are part of a system where we support positive behaviors. We have 3 values. We wanted to get everything together. So we are in a very special time. We feel that, and if we could support this program, we would help the students not be victims of digital, but to be present on the digital scene and to control it. So I think this will be great for these students. I think you heard him mention this, looking at his poster of the reference framework. We couldn't see on his screen, but we could feel he had it on the wall. You probably heard him say that it's ambitious. But where do we start, Annie? So that's very interesting, because what's inspiring in Mathieu's project with his team, as Maxime said, is what he put at the center is the development of the autonomy of his school team. So that brings us back to the base, how as a team we can be autonomous to develop the digital skills of our students. So they took awareness of things together, of where they stood and where they wanted to get. So as you said, they chose certain components, and the choice of citizenship at the digital age was the most important. What Mathieu also did is create a culture of learning for him and for the members of his team. So there was room for common reflection, where we would start from a common area for teachers that had a better knowledge and others that had less knowledge. So they were together to bring the students where they wanted to bring them, which is interesting. In the last two testimonies, we saw the importance of the position of the students, the importance of the students. Valerie said it. Students have an important role in her professional development. Mathieu said the same. Students are at the core of their choices, actions, and that is the role of our education environment, of pedagogical advisors and teachers and everyone who is working around these students. So these are very inspiring practices at all levels. We saw that in preschool, in adult general education. We saw professionals develop managers. So once again, the reference framework of digital skills is for everyone, from the youngest to the eldest, and everybody has a role to play in the development of digital skills. Thank you from the bottom of our heart, Annie and Maxime, for allowing us to appreciate the interrelationship between all these dimensions from the core. So with both of you, I understood that acting as an ethical citizen in the digital age is a default setting that we need to create as soon as we start using screens. It's a default setting that we need to add. And to go further, we invite you to go on citnum.ca and cadre21.org. I'm curious. I'd like to go to the chat to see what you've shared in terms of inspiring practices. I will invite Manon. Manon, what would you like to highlight from the chat? Yes, with pleasure, Stephanie. It's very interesting to read the chat. The chat is full. Several people are highlighting that to develop this dimension, we need to be responsible, aware, critical. We need to question, reflect, develop the critical thought. It is said that is someone who is aware of the use of digital tools and its impacts on their daily lives. Marjorie Paradis explains that what characterizes the ethical citizen in the digital age is that this person needs to be autonomous and use its action power, taking into account the collectivity. Nadia says raising awareness of students in sharing content and following content. Julie, please tell us what else you saw in the chat. We noticed in the chat that people are very happy to hear about the application in preschool, so that things are starting very early on in education. So, and that teachers are acting as supporters. They are supporting students. They're not simply dictating rules to be followed. So they need to be, they are listening to the children and they're involved in their learning. That's what we see in the chat. That's very interesting. It's very nice to hear these inspiring shares. Please remain with us. We will receive our next expert guests. We will need a few moments. Please stay with us.
C'est le moment de vous présenter les prochains invités.
The time has come to present the next guests of Block 2, who will talk about another dimension that is at the heart of our reference framework of digital skills, developing and mobilizing technological skills. Let me introduce them. Jean Bélanger, who is a pedagogical advisor at the CSS Développer. He's also co and facilitator of a practice community in a remote training of FADIO. Hello, Jean. Hi, everyone. Hello. I will also introduce Stéphane Davio. He is a race seat advisor at the CSS Saint-Hyacinthe. He accompanies teachers of his school service center in a particular project of computer programming. He is very passionate about this role he holds with his colleagues. Hi, Stéphanie. And we have Marie-Claude Nicole, the director of École en Réseau, which promotes collaboration between teachers and interclass work by students added remotely in order to learn together. So to begin, what form can the dimension of developing and mobilizing technological skills take? So in the chat, give us examples, please. For example, pedagogical possibilities of these dimensions. But with our guests, I'd like to start with Jean. What form can this take? I have a lot of examples, Stephanie, but before getting into them, I'd like to remind you that the dimension of developing, mobilizing your technological skills is a transversal dimension at the heart of the digital skills, which is related to other dimensions. When we mobilize technological skills, it begins with understanding the use of technology. What is it used for? So we associate this use with a context, a need, an intention. So once we've understood that, once we've made this association, we then see the importance of maintaining up-to-date one's digital skills. It can be very simple elements that might bring us very far or that already meet our needs. So it could bring us to, it could be, for example, facilitating a webinar, organizing content in a learning digital content. When we talk about remote teaching, we can think about getting students to experience that. It can also be simpler. It could be managing efficiently your inbox using a TNI, supporting students in person during a project. And I would add to what Jean mentions, a strategy or an important position for teachers in the development of their computer programs. It's to be able to play the role of a beginner teacher. As you know, in our service centers, teachers that take part in projects are teachers who know little about programming. And by playing this role, taking on this position allows teachers to accept that they don't know everything and that they are learning with students. And with teachers and pedagogical advisors, we say that the important thing is to learn, to go from A to B. And this itinerary is different for everyone, but it's adapted to each and everyone's capabilities. And working this way with teachers, they were able to develop their basic knowledge in programming. And meanwhile, we realize that programming allows to develop effectively digital technological skills and digital skills, but also work on develop discipline and other skills. And it's possible because teachers accept to be learners as well. Yes, we talked about possibilities, we talked about positions or roles to play. Marie-Claude, I think it's very interesting and relevant what Jean and Stéphane shared. On our end at École en Réseau, for the last 20 years, we've been doing pedagogy supported by digital. And we do this with all teachers and school stakeholders to be very sensitive to every innovation and to put it at the service of professional development of teachers and for the good of the learning of students as well. For example, to develop some informational skills of students, we contextualize this in a project where they need to publish a text on the web, a critic of a literary work, of a scientific project. And when we hold a webinar to facilitate exchanges between classes, students, and some extra curricular stakeholders, they come and exchange with students, for example, a scientific expert or a cultural mediator. We will then focus on learning and technological skills will also develop in so doing. When we talk about technology, we know that it can be scary. In your daily life, you have to support and reassure teachers. What works best, Jean? One thing we can set up that works is collaboration. I like to focus on the human. Of course, we're talking about digital, but the human is at the core of things. So the importance of interpersonal relationship is key. It's important to recognize that it's important to be supported so that we always know there's someone around who can help us, who has resources available. The strength of our network this capacity to collaborate becomes possible because we're well supported. We have our colleagues, we have the RACIT, local RACIT, the National Services of RACIT, pedagogical advisors, all professionals who are in the environment. And we also have communication tools, virtual spaces that were developed. What they do is allow us to collaborate efficiently together. In this network we can create around ourselves. I like that. Stéphane, what allows us to reassure teachers that might have concerns about technology in our service centers to help teachers in the development of programming? That's one thing we do, but also in all their projects, the projects we collaborate with them is support. Our focus is to be present in classes so that we don't leave teachers alone. And we use the strategic teaching. We do that with our own teachers. So the first step is to tell our teachers to live the projects the same way students will live them. So we give them a computer, a tablet, and if we facilitate in class, we ask teachers to live the project and at the same time as students. And once teachers are more comfortable, we propose co-teaching, so guided teaching. So together we work to make sure that the experiences are positive. And finally, when teachers feel comfortable, they're more autonomous, more self-assured, we go towards autonomous practice. So the teacher will be before the students to teach. Meanwhile, we remain in class, we're at the background, and we're there if there are technical problems or sometimes if there are more complex questions, we're there to answer them. So we are present. So the idea is that we allow teachers to live positive experiences that make them secure through our support and to at their pace. That's what I hear, right? Once again, I think is very relevant. I agree. The way that the idea that you're not alone helps. The idea that your students will learn a lot of things, they will develop their digital skills, discipline skills, social skills is key. And how can we do that? Well, through an environment where we have fine-tuned activities, well-planned, and where teachers are supported remotely. They also have an online support room that's always open every day. So they know that when they are holding a pedagogical activity in school, they know they're supported by their peers and by the network. So it's important to support teachers in the development of their technological skills. Jean, earlier you mentioned the importance of understanding the possibilities that technologies have. Apparently, we can even clone oneself. Yes. Yes. So in Montjoly, we have Alexandre Lavoie, who is the high school teacher, and Marie-Pierre Lavoie-Roussel, an orthopedagogist, who cloned themselves to be in person with all secondary one classrooms. So they're present on the board in the school. So Alexandre created well, he received a visio conference system. When he saw the material, he was wondering how it worked. He called me to see how it worked. He used it. And when he saw the possibilities, he had the answer to a project that he was already thinking about with his colleague Marie-Pierre. And they were focusing on the school success of secondary one students. Let's listen to Alexandre Marie-Pierre. when I had the opportunity to be in contact with the new technology, I saw the potential that allowed us to address several classrooms at the same time. That's why we decided to organize activities where we would take periods where all students of secondary one would be in the presence of their tutor, their teacher, and they could do activities on the organization. So for a few years, we thought that the activity had to be further developed for high school, because in high school there are several ways to do things that are different than what the students learned in primary school. So we wanted to have a unique way and speak of the same voice with all the students. So we wanted to give the same presentation to all the students of secondary one and all the teachers at the same time, so that we would be working together in the same direction, and we would develop work methods among students. So by using this technology, it was much easier. Students could remain in their classroom and have a presentation versus going into a bigger class or a theater, and they wouldn't have been able to do the work required. So there were several presentations, one at the beginning of the school year where we talked about the rules of the school, how to use the agenda, how things worked in high school, uh, who were the teachers. And then we also worked on work methods related to preparing for exams, efficient study techniques. And we also taught them how to make their way through documents, how to research things. And we also did a school health report card, because the report card was given to them not long ago. Great, Jean. So Alexandre and Marie-Pierre mobilize technological skills. They are an example of proactivity in the support of their digital skills. They also contributed to making the school life more dynamic. And we will see other uses of this video conferencing integrated system in that very school. We saw music students having specialists of some instruments interacting remotely with teachers and students during music classes that are happening in person. So in the context of the pandemic, some classes of the school benefited from co-modal teaching, namely in math. So they had to select tools, learn them, but it started with curiosity. A few ideas, exchanges among teachers. So these technological tools were used to communicate in the digital age and to go through projects that met tangible needs, real needs that are many in the school context. So Stéphane, you will present the testimony of a teacher in primary school who started doing computer programming with her students. Why did she do that? So programming is everywhere in a student's environment. Think about all the devices that are programmable, and also artificial intelligence apps that are being deployed very fast. The reason why we initiated this project, it was the reaction of the students. So we start programming in kindergarten 4. So and we continue through grade school. So we have first graders who understand programming very quickly, and they're upholding challenges. And teachers spontaneously are able to answer cycle to students who log into their account. They've developed their technological skills. They're autonomous. They will even create personal projects at home. They're showing us these projects as soon as they get to school. In school adaptation, when our students go through projects, they can show what their progress, they can produce things, and they're very proud of themselves. And we have our high schoolers who delve into programming quickly. We even have students who would like to do more program to get to understand some notions more concretely. The abstract notions in math make them more concrete. So that tells us why we want to do programming. But then we also have our colleague Cassie, our teacher, who has a testimony for us. At the beginning, I had no experience but now I'm able to teach it, to understand programming, so to teach it to students and to integrate it in my teaching. At the beginning, of course, in grade 3, students are starting to use computers, so they're much more comfortable now. They're able to turn the computer on, to get on the Scratch website, because that's where we do our programming. They've developed their skills to go to Teams, because now I send them minor programming challenges on Teams. So their skills with the computer have improved. And programming develops mathematical thought, logical thought. It also brought them to collaborate among them. It also develops self-esteem, because oftentimes students who are not necessarily the best in math and in French, who end up finding a new skill they find their strength, and they're able to help others in the classroom. So in the French class, what we did is we had a story and we wanted to animate the story with programming. So it's a great source of motivation for students. We see the difference and they're developing more ideas and ideas further, because they're happy to program and to write. So in the Scratch tool, we also can do some movement. So on the X and Y axes. So next year, I'd like to integrate that faster, because I was trained to do it now. So I started integrating programming in my teaching after the beginning of classes, but I'd like to start at the beginning of class next year, because it motivates children. I started doing Scratch challenges, which is very motivating for children in other classes as well, in other topics. They want to have their programming moment at the end of the day. As you noticed, Stephanie, I would say that Cassie's testimony summarizes the situation of all of our teachers. They feel autonomous. At the end of the project, their goal is to see how we could include more discipline skills in programming and pursue development of digital and technological skills. Is very inspiring to listen to Cassie on programming. Marie-Claude, in a moment, we will hear a teacher from preschool who delved into a digital itinerary adventure with her students. What did she go through? So, Marie-Ève, since the beginning of the school year, when she registered to the activity to a digital itinerary, something that was inspired from the digital action plan model. She went through this with other classes throughout Quebec. She was supported. She had a detailed planning of all the pedagogical intentions, disciplinary skills, what she was going to develop as a teacher for in terms of technological skills, and what her students would develop as well. So let's listen to her. I did the robots and stories project a few times, which is a great activity with preschoolers. In the meantime, it allows us to initiate our preschoolers to robotics. It allowed my students to discover robotics, to get robots to work. And we then delved into the project robots and stories to create stories and to create a model. So it's very motivating for children, because they are participating with other classes. They see other classes they'll need to present their project to, and the preschoolers discover their artistic side. We create a model. Some children are much more program savvy. Some of our students film with an iPad, others are narrators. It's a project that allows children to discover new strengths, because some of them don't know that they have skills for programming or for storytelling. So we're discovering many beautiful things with our students in this project. So it's accessible to all. I think all you need is the will to do it, to try it out, and trial and error. Do your best. And that was the first. That was the thing. The first time when I started with this project, I was a bit worried, but people told me, "Look, Marie-Ève, let's do it our way, and we'll do it. We're doing this the best we can with our students. So that's what other teachers told me. It gave birth to great projects. Each classroom was different. With the first model, we did the three little pigs, and students wanted to tell the story in sequences, filming it. So it was a great project. In other classes, we listened to their watched their presentations. They did things differently, but each classroom had its own colors, own way to do things. It's great to get children to discover technological tools, as well as for us as teachers to develop our technological skills. This is beautiful. I am always fascinated by these first line workers in these projects. Marie-Ève, you're listening to Marie-Ève, what do you get from this? Each time I listen to her, I'm very impressed. And I always find what she's sharing with us is rich. She's very motivated to be part of this community, this project. She's being supported by other teachers, and she's supported by École en Réseau remotely as well. And she's very motivated by the fact that through this project, she is learning herself. She's doing professional development in action with her students. And we can hear that from thousands of other teachers throughout Quebec. They are having activities with l'École en Réseau remotely in their class, and they can take advantage of these projects with their teaching, with their students. So that is very interesting to me to see them to delve into the project, even though they're afraid, they're not sure, but they have people supporting them and they know that, and that's what makes them go through with it. And everyone is doing it their own way. As I said at the beginning, inspiring practices are happening in many contexts. Thank you so much, all three of you, our expert guests. To go further, I invite you to take advantage of the strengths of the network, to follow on fadio.net. To go further in programming, please go to campus.recit.qc.ca. Get in contact with your RACIT advisors at the School Service Center. They're there for you, and they are great. I invite you to start up a project, a digital program on our website. So now I'm curious, let's go back to the chat. I'd like to ask Julie Michel what she would like to highlight that was shared in the chat. So once again, in the second block, there are a lot of reactions that come from the support that we heard about, support offered by the various networks and organizations. One person highlights the fact that it's important to use students to get them to collaborate together, to put them in a position where they can collaborate and help each other. Some will discover strengths among students, and all teachers had situations where they were proud to see students mobilize and do trial and error. So it's important to give them room to learn. Manon, are there elements that you've raised? Yes, here are a few other examples. Digital should allow to do something that's not possible to be done elsewhere, in another way. Collaborating on a document to creating video or audio segments and filming an activity and presenting it to the class. So these technological skills allow to use new skills that allow to develop disciplinary skills. It's the new pencil case now. So we can teach them to use software functions that will execute some tasks related to the training program and developing strategies. So creating quizzes, reviewing among students, programming in preschool, etc. Great. You are very inspiring in the chat. Now, please remain with us. We'll take another few minutes to welcome our guests from Block 3, producing content with digital. Please remain online. So let's talk about inspiring practices around producing content with digital. So I will introduce our guest, Maude Labonté, digital advisor at Regional Receipt, and live from Trois-Rivières, Marie-Josée Bibot, who is pedagogical advisor receipt at AGE in the Mauricie region. Hi, Marie-Josée. Hello, Stephanie. So it's great to have both of you here to address practices in the youth sector and the adult education sector. What are the pedagogical possibilities to produce content with digital? Marie-Josée. The reality of adult general education and professional training is different than in the youth sector. So teachers in this dimension, dimension developed rather with teachers. Teachers got engaged, they created videos, pedagogical material, questionnaires, integrated virtual classrooms. We got all this material into a digital common and uniform environment. So we used Google Sites. What's important to know at adult general education is that a student in a school year, in the same class, they can have several teachers. So it's important to us that the student be in a pedagogical and digital environment that is consistent. Mode, what are the pedagogical possibilities? I'd like to build on what Manon said in the chat earlier. There are a lot of pedagogical possibilities that were mentioned. I'd like to add the fact that any content production that is produced by a student through digital starts off from the teacher's pedagogical intention, that's for sure. It also allows to go beyond, to push the limits of creativity, because in my view, the dimension of product content is interrelated to the innovation and creativity dimension. So with digital, I think in the chat, this was mentioned, with digital, we can use put the text together with the image, with sound, with video. So we can create new productions we could not create in the past. And I really like the example of the collaborative text, where students come and work in the same document. They will write things, they will be able to build the ideas of their partners. So that brings us to collaboration, truly. And then they can improve through that. Another idea, quickly, the podcast is getting back in classes, among others in the field of language. So it will allow for developing the verbal communication skills. So students record themselves, they can then listen to themselves and then auto-regulate, improve to maybe produce a second recording that will be the final production. So in my view, what's important to get from this is that with digital, we are pushing limits of creativity. We're also able to offer more choice and to vary the production throughout the school year. Yes, we're making progress, as you said. In a few moments, we'll hear the testimony of using the croquis note. So what is the croquis note? So to put you in the context, sometimes we have a good idea and we'll explain that with words, but it's important to have a sketch, a note sketch. So what is a note sketch? So a note sketch or a sketch note is a concept that we decided to transfer to the classroom. So using sketch notes for teaching. So I took part in a congress in October. I was at the sketchnote workshop. I fell in love with this app that allows us to illustrate concepts. Children who in the past had already seen the base of the sketchnote app open their app and then they try to represent through drawing the essence of what they had understood. So in history, we try to vary the ways to convey information through texts, through schemes, but an image is another way to use language, is another way to communicate. Because now, when the word is supported by an image, we can build the concept, allows the students to take ownership of it. It demonstrates through drawing the understanding of the notion. We've demonstrated that drawing allows for learning. It allows us to give an image to a thought we have in our mind. It allows students to read a text and answer a question. They were forced to think about what the important thing was in the text. So they had a symbol in their mind. They said, if I look at what I did today, if I look at it, if I draw it, I know what it means. Very interesting. So this is great collaboration. These two projects are great collaboration. We asked the students, because we saw the productions they made, we asked the students to draw, through simple drawings, concepts that are very complex. For example, you have a grade 4 students, panorama is not something that's easy to understand. So writing a description might not have been as clear for some students. So to get them to draw, to take ownership of the concept was very interesting. So in high school, we go even further. The concepts are more complex. We are talking about revolutions, justice, law. So we saw students being able to build these concepts to go further than just explaining with words. With sketch note, we could do that with a pen and paper, but that would be okay. But I think using digital tools brings value because it's as if it broke the limits of creativity, because we take much more risk. I'm not very good at drawing, but with digital tools, I'm less afraid. If something happens, I can get back and correct it with the digital tools. I felt that in the class because for some students, sometimes before the white sheet, we're sort of stuck. We don't know what to draw, what to do, but digital tools allows us to go further. What's interesting as well is that it's an approach that can be transferred in other topics. We were here in the social universe, but in science, we could do a sketch note on the water cycle, for example. So with all the complex concepts, this is very useful. Students can also produce content through the pedagogical use of the serious games. Let's look at the testimony. Automatically, when you build a dam on a water body, there are impacts. Think about what it's going to do in your Minecraft world. Is it going to dry out? Is it going to create problems? Is there going to be a dam break? And so work as a team and find consensus. Using Minecraft allows students to think about very complex issues that require collaboration and decision making that can bring them to work on a territory in a way that's very different. So using these games makes things different because they feel they have an impact on the environment when they build things, as opposed to just drawing on a map. So the immersion aspect is very important. So there's a debate within the team that's very good for their training, because they are forced to making compromise with their colleagues, because each of them have their issues they are defending. So that's great. So in a complex environment, there is no single solution that's the good solution. These are issues that don't have a true solution. It allows students to go a bit further and propose solutions that are very innovative.
On a vu vraiment là, des élèves engagés.
So we saw students that were mobilized. I was in the classroom at that time, and what I liked with this project is students are immersed in a world. They see the organization of the territory, of the land, and this game allows for collaboration. We talked about creativity, but also now we're adding collaboration. Marie-Josée, we will hear your colleague Tommy in a few moments, who will talk about the digital environment, work environment in which your learners are evolving. Well, briefly, to draw a link with what I said earlier, yes, he is in our digital environment, but for things to be consistent, we need to support him. We need to support them in our reality. So Tommy is going to explain the first week of a student in adult education. Our center offers the training initiation. It's a secondary 5 level class in a completely digital environment. So from the onset, the first hours of training, students must familiarize with the Google digital environment. We give them a Chromebook, we get them familiar with that tool, and afterwards we invite them to navigate through the tools. The content of the course was designed in Google site completely. So there's a Google Classroom in which the students evolved through their learning activities. Students have to complete questionnaires and do their homework in the framework of the class. The questionnaires are Google Forms, and the homework take several forms. There's they need to write text. There are videos they need to watch. They need to produce sketches. We try to be flexible by proposing homework that is free form homework. So students must go back to tell us about their past schooling experience by writing a text, or by producing videos using images, or by producing an audio recording. Marie-Josée, what are the advantages for learners?
Dans le fond, les apprenants sont plus actifs dans leur apprentissage. Ils ne sont pas assis devant un cahier de 200-300 pages.
Learners are more active. They're not opening a 300-page book and going through pages. So the school book is there, but it's complementary, and the digital environment is more diversified. So going through the environment, we see that some tasks were removed. It's less discouraging for students. They reach success faster, so everybody's winning. So there are many practices. We talk about content production. So what do you want us to get from this? I want you to get that we can vary our productions throughout the whole year. Content production with digital, in my view, means creativity plus collaboration. And I'd like to tell teachers that they should delve into experimentation on some projects. There are several projects that do exist, so we don't always have to reinvent the wheel. The national Réussite each have their own platforms with a lot of resources that are accessible. As we said it in the other blocks, it's important to develop yourself, to ask for help to a colleague, and to be supported. What about you, Marie-Josée? What do you get from this? It's very important to keep producing with digital. We always work on basing ourselves on the universal design of learning. We could also use that for digital design in teaching. We always need to be aware of new developments and keep putting our students in a position where they have the freedom to choose. We're very proud in adult general education of where we've gotten, and we're ready to go further. By the way, we have a creative lab project that is starting with an Indigenous community, the Atikamekw community, Atikamekw Nation. So students produce content with digital tools. They create objects from their culture. So this is to be continued. It's beautiful to see this take birth. It's starting. So thank you, Maud, thank you, Marie-Josée. And to continue, I invite you to go on recitus.qc.ca and to look at this self-training on campus.reci.qc.ca, but also go on the AGE website, reci.age.ca, to have pedagogical digital support. Before we close, let's go back to Julie and Manon to see what you've said in the chat, what inspired our audience. To conclude, for the dimension producing content, José Baudouin says that the sketch note can be used as class notes produced by the student. It allows to record the voice on top of having a sketch. Nadine says that varying expression means with students is it differentiates productions. We love that. It allows to develop creativity, and several tools to create books were mentioned, very interesting. Several tools were indicated in the chat. Julie Sivierge says that too often the teachers talk about their own interests and needs, while we should focus on the interests and needs of students. Julie, one comment was mentioned from the beginning. It deserves to be highlighted. So it is said that we should not hesitate to use the help of our pedagogical advisors who are there to help us and support us, give us advice, and support us towards digital learning in class. So congratulations to our stakeholders who inspired many, many people. Thank you. It's great to have heard you in the chat. It's already the end. A big thank you to QTR, to all of you who welcomed us. We were very well welcomed at their Quebec City campus. Thank you to all of our expert guests who shared testimonies from stakeholders. It was very inspiring. These practices are grand, but also very simple. It is possible to go further with them and to use them. So I invite you to delve into this. So thank you to each and every one of you for being with us. This webinar was recorded. It will be available on the page of the Digital Action Plan in Education in the training section. To conclude, I will let you with an inspiring thought. We love this person at the L'École Branchée. It's a quote from Paulo Coelho, who says, "A bit of madness is necessary to take a step forward." Thank you very much.